So before we get started, what actually is ASCAP? ASCAP is one of the two major performing rights organizations here in the United States that actually keeps track of all the performances that you have of your original work and then gives you a royalty for those performances. Now, these performances need to be made in public or at a public venue, or maybe they're on the internet, or maybe they're on the radio, and so forth. And if you want to know more about how to join and register your works with ASCAP, I do have a video linked above and also down in the description below about how you can go about doing this. But more specifically, we're going to dive into the statement that I just received from ASCAP, which is super exciting because finally I know how much I received for this performance that I had back in May 2018 with the Hangzhou Philharmonic Orchestra in Beijing, China. So why is this so important? Well, simply put, ASCAP is mainly in charge of distributing your royalties from US performances. They're not specifically responsible for distributing your performance royalties for outside the US. So this is especially salient for this particular topic because I had a performance out in China and I had to make sure that it was going to be counted in terms of my royalties. So what actually had to happen was I had to let ASCAP know, hey, I'm having a performance out in China, and I sent them the program for this performance. And then about 2 years later, which is now, I guess, I find out that the performing rights organization out in China, the MCSC, which stands for Music Copyright Society of China, was able to confirm that yes, I did have a performance out there, and yes, I should get performance royalties for this. So it's super exciting, and not so much about the money that I'm gonna get from this, because the money is okay, it's certainly less than what I get out here in the US, but at least now I have some knowledge about, okay, how much does this piece earn me in a place like China? So let's go ahead and dive into both my writer and publisher statements. We're first going to start off with the writer statement. Okay, the first thing we got to do is make sure that Ivy is occupied with this chicken. That way we can occupy ourselves with our writer statement over here. So let's open this up. And the first thing that we notice is this gray box on the right-hand side that says $71.75. So if you remember the writer statement that I showed you from January, this one pales in comparison to that, but this one might be a little bit more interesting because it actually comes from overseas and not from a US venue. So it's interesting for that reason, and probably for that reason alone. So turning now to the second page, we do notice that we do see how much I earned in each one of these quarters of 2021. Obviously, we're just in the first quarter of 2021, so we do see my domestic royalties that I received back in January, and then we see these international royalties which I received this week from ASCAP. So you see that $71.75 is there. So let's turn now to the third page. What do you think about that? Should we turn to the third page? What do you think? Okay, whatever she thinks, we're still gonna go to the third page. So if we take a look at the third page here, we see a whole bunch of different categories. We see cinema, we see internet radio. My favorite one here is karaoke. So that one's a lot of fun. And then we're going to live performances, radio, satellite radio, etc. But the strange thing is my performance royalty is in the music by electronic or mechanical means, which let me tell you, it definitely wasn't because it was a live performance at the Forbidden City Concert Hall. So this was a very typical orchestral performance with a crowd there and all that kind of thing. So it's very strange that they categorize this as a music by electronic or mechanical means, but it's still money coming into my bank, so I can't complain about that. Moving on to the fourth page, now we see this one line that says China, then it says MCSC, which is the Music Copyright Society of China, aka the ASCAP of China. And then we see the dollar amount, $71.75. So it's very simple, just one line, there was just one performance, and that's all there is to it. And finally, we're at our last page where you actually see the name of the piece, Takt, and then the dollar amount, $71.75. If we compare this to a royalty, let's say from a couple of years ago, where I had Takt from a US orchestra there, it's actually far more money, as you can see. So it is a little bit of a disappointment in some way that the money is so much lower than a US orchestra, but at the same time, I'm grateful that I did receive any money for a performance like this outside the US. All right, now it's time for the publishing statement. What do you think about that, Ivy? Or you just want to eat chicken? I don't blame her at all. Okay, so let's take a look at this thing. Now, first of all, why would you have a publishing statement if you're a composer, for example? The main reason has to do with a financial reason. You need to make sure that you have 100% of your performance royalties, not just 50%. So if you sign up just as a writer with ASCAP, for example, you're only getting 50% of the performance royalties. So in this case, you're only getting $71.75. Looks like Ivy only cares about the chicken instead of getting another $71.75, which is what I definitely want. So make sure you sign up as a writer and publisher. That way you can make double the amount, not just that $71.75, for example. So let's take a look at our publishing statement. Isn't that right, Ivy? We need to take a look at it finally, huh? All right, so the first page, you're going to notice that it's very similar to the first page of the writer's statement. The only difference is that it says Did Press on the top left, which is my publishing company. But you're going to see in that gray box, it still says $71.75, which is pretty good. Now, if we take a look at the second page, you do see the same quarter breakdown as you did with the writer's statement. So this is very similar. And now take a look at the third page. You do see the same kind of thing from the writer's statement. So it's very easy. Once you see the writer's statement, what? You want more chicken? She wants more chicken. So once you see the writer's statement, right, you see that the publishing statement is very, very similar. So let's take a look at the next page now. So now on this next page, we do notice that it's very, very similar to the writer's statement, that we have this weird kind of category that says music by electronic or mechanical mean. This same $71.75 goes into this very category. So very easy to read once you know how to read the writer's statement. So let's go ahead and move on to the next page. And here we see China, MCSC, and the $71.75. So we're happy, we know what this is. Let's move on to the next page. Here we see that this is also very similar to the writer's statement. We have my piece talk, so we know it's the same piece that we're talking about from the writer's statement. And we see the $71.75 coming from China. So that's it. What did you think, Ivy? We made it through?